How fiat currency will destroy the world. And this is part 1 of 2. We don't want to get too doom and gloom. So tomorrow's video will be about how the gold standard will save the world. So make sure you tune into that. But for today's video, I'm going to explain this to you in 3 simple, fast steps. Step number 1, the gold standard versus fiat currency. We all know that a fiat currency creates inflation, a huge financial economy that can endanger the real economy, wealth inequality. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking about the rich getting richer. That is totally fine. What I am talking about is making sure that the poor and middle class are getting richer as well. And debt. We all know that debt in a fiat currency system goes through the roof. But why is that? To get our minds around this, let's take it right back to a very simple economy. This guy produces cows, this guy wheat, and this guy produces cotton. They each have a gold coin that they kind of trade back and forth. Makes it a little easier than trading cotton for cows. But along comes another guy that produces lumber. And they say, wow, this is going to be really cumbersome. We really like the fact that we've got more goods and services, but since we only have one gold coin apiece, it's going to make it very difficult. So what they do to come up with a solution is they just divide their one gold coin by 10. So they subdivide that gold coin. Let's say they subdivide it into something called a dime. So each one of them has 10 dimes. 10 dimes equal 1 gold coin. Well, this works fine because now this guy has 10 dimes, this guy has 10 dimes, that guy has 10 dimes, this guy has 10 dimes. And they just trade those dimes back and forth instead of this 1 gold coin. This is massive deflation, according to the economists, especially the Keynesians. But in this situation, demand did not go down. Why is that? Because this guy doesn't care what his currency unit is. He just needs to get wheat, cows, and lumber for his family. So whether he's trading a dime or a gold coin, it really doesn't matter to him. And how does this guy increase his wealth? Not by getting more gold coins or more dimes. He increases his wealth by producing more wheat. Because the more wheat that he produces, the more cows he can get, the more cotton he can buy, the more lumber he can buy, and the more free time that he can spend with his family. It has nothing to do with the currency units. It has everything to do with how much or how little they produce. So how does a fiat currency system change everything? The Fed looks at how many coins are in the system and says, oh, no. That will not work. We don't want to subdivide these coins because that will create deflation, and we hate deflation. So we're going to create 10 times more coins. We want roughly 40 coins. So we're going to print up these things called GCs, or G coins for government coins. And they print up 40 of these, and then they buy government debt. So the politicians, your insolvent Uncle Sam, looks at all of this new money creation and says, aha, I know what I can do. I can go ahead and issue bonds, run up all this debt, and the Fed will print money to buy that debt. Then I can take all that funny money and buy votes. So your insolvent Uncle Sam looks at the guy who produces cows and says, yeah, I like that guy, and I think he's going to vote for me. He looks at the guy that produces wheat and says, yep, same thing. I think that guy is just gullible enough to believe my lies. So he gives this gentleman 20 brand new GCs. And he gives the wheat farmer another 20. So now the cow farmer has 21 coins. The wheat farmer has 21 coins. But the cotton and the lumber guy only have one coin. So the cow guy and wheat guy look at how many coins they have and they say, wow, that's way too much. I don't need that many coins. So I'm going to go ahead and take 10% of my coins and I'm going to invest them into the financial economy. I'm going to buy stocks, bonds, or real estate. So each one of these farmers takes 2 of their coins, so 4 coins total, and inserts them into the financial economy. That makes the economy grow to a size of 4 coins in total. But what would have happened if these same 2 farmers wanted to invest 10% of the coins they had in our original example? Well, they each would have taken 2 dimes. That would have been 0.2 coins total. They would have taken those 0.2 coins and invested them into the financial economy, into stocks, bonds, or real estate. But the total size of the financial economy in that scenario would be 0.2 coins instead of 4 coins. Also, their wealth would not be that much greater than the wealth of the 2 farmers who didn't invest any coins that they had into the financial economy. They probably wanted to keep their coins and invest them back into their own business because they know they could get a better return by investing into the real economy than they could in the financial economy, because the financial economy only goes up by 0.2 coins, not by 4 coins. So by introducing the fiat currency, we have created inflation. We now have more coins chasing the same amount of goods and services. The financial economy has grown exponentially. Inequality has increased between these 2 and these 2. And the debt of the government or the society as a whole has gone through the roof. Oh, but wait, there is more. You could be saying to yourself right now, yeah, George, I get it, but this is all really overly simplistic, and you didn't even include the banking system, and they're the ones that create the M2 money supply by additional liabilities. They loan money into existence. I don't really think you get it. And for all those people out there, I want you to know that I follow Richard Warner very closely, and I have studied those 2014 reports by the Bank of England up, down, and sideways. So trust me, when it comes to modern day banking, I get it. But it doesn't change the overall concept and the differences between a fixed money system, i.e. the gold standard, and a fiat currency system. If I am right with this outline, we should see a significant change in all of these items starting in 1971. For that, let's go to a website called WTF Happened in 1971. There's several charts on this website, and I'd suggest checking it out. The first one I want to address is just the CPI going back to 1775. Look at its growth trajectory from 1970 to today. Next is income growth from 1917 to 2012. And this really flatlines for the bottom 90% starting in 1971. But it really doesn't go up for the top 1% until the early 1980s. In my opinion, this is because you had 2 things converging. Number 1, a fiat currency with 30 to 40 years of interest rates continually going down and artificially being suppressed by the Fed. And if you're still having doubts, if you think this all could just be coincidental, look at this chart of total debt in the system from 1971 to today relative to GDP. Really staggering. Step number 2, it brings us to social unrest. The more inflation that we get in the system, the harder it is for the people in the real economy to afford what they need just to get by day to day, especially if the government isn't admitting to that inflation and claiming that everything is just fine. This really starts to piss off the people in the real economy. They get more and more angry, and it's like this powder keg that's ready to blow. They're saying, I can't afford food, I can't afford gas. F you to the fat cats. And of course, the fat cats, the 1%, are just getting richer and richer and richer because of the increase in the size of the financial economy. They're the only ones with the assets. What makes this thing blow up and create all this social unrest that we've been seeing lately is not the 1% increase in bus fare, the 25% increase in gas, or the 10% in food prices. It's everything that's happened before. It's all that pent-up frustration. As we used to say in business, it's never about what it's about. And the real tragedy is that as the people in the real economy focus more and more of their anger at the fat cats, at the financial economy, because the financial economy has grown so big and completely consumed the real economy, by this decreasing in size, which is what they think they want, that actually destroys the real economy, making things worse. The irony here is where their anger should be focused is right around the corner, up and to the right, at the Fed and the government and the fiat currency system. That is the catalyst to all of their problems. To understand how this social unrest is growing exponentially in the world today, let's cut to a Macro Voices podcast with Grant Williams from Real Vision.
But I think the fact that these protests seem to get violent so quickly, you've just mentioned a possible reason for it. I don't know whether that's true or not, but what I do know is the fact that I think none of these protests are really about the thing that causes the fire to be lit. This is the problem. The fact that they escalate so quickly tells you that there is a deep-seated dissatisfaction beneath the surface. Some of it, I suspect, is wealth inequality, and whether it's jealousy or a sense of unfairness. A big part of it is the cost of living going up, despite people being, as I said, told how great everything's doing, that they have to balance a checkbook every week, and they know that that isn't the case. But there's something about being told by the leaders of your country that everything's fine. People tend historically to believe that. I think that belief is starting to fray, because I think we've seen so many examples of leaders, saying everything's fine when it really isn't. And so people are starting to believe that for a less amount of time now. And they're starting to question the media. They're starting to question what their leaders are telling them, because instinctively they feel that they're being lied to. And when you're being lied to about many things, you can shrug it off. But when you're being lied to, and at the same time you can't actually put food on your family's tables, then things tend to escalate very quickly. Throw into the fact that part of this rich-poor divide, people see politicians who are incredibly wealthy when they leave office. The amount of corruption around the world in that list of countries I gave you is, again, a ubiquitous trait of all these uprisings. We have this kind of perfect storm of rising costs of necessities, rising cost of assets, which only really benefits the rich, poor leadership, lies, the media being discredited. We have this perfect storm that really taps into, as you said, this anger that people have in terms of wanting to burn the thing down. And whether that's literal or metaphorical, I would say the metaphorical aspect of it is probably far more dangerous.
Step number 3, the end game. As usual, when we talk about the end game, all we have to do is insert the banking system. We know that the fewer restrictions that are on currency, the more fiat that currency is, the more inflation we get, inequality, financialization of the economy, debt, and social unrest. So in other words, the fewer restrictions on the currency, the more social unrest that we have. Well, most of you are probably saying right about now, thank goodness we've got at least a few checks and balances on our current fiat system. I mean, we've got reserve requirements. So if the banks, we've got bank A, B, and C, they lend to individuals and they create money out of thin air, but they're doing that on a limited pool of money. So with fractional reserve banking at a 10% reserve requirement, that $1 million can really only be multiplied into $10 million. So there is a limit on how much money can be printed or created out of thin air. That would be true if the banking system worked like that. But unfortunately, it may not. To explore this further, let's go back to the Bank of England's 2014 paper that I referenced earlier. In reality, neither are reserves a binding constraint on lending, nor does the central bank fix the amount of reserves that are available. Banks first decide how much to lend depending on the profitable lending opportunities available to them. This in turn influences how much central bank money banks want to hold in reserve, which then in normal times is supplied on demand by the Bank of England. And I want to make sure that you understand that very well. What they're saying is the bank first and foremost creates a loan, and then the central bank gives them however much they need in reserve to cover that loan. So if what the Bank of England is saying is true, there is absolutely no limit on the amount of money that the banks can create. It's fiat currency on steroids. Even if there's only a $1 million pool of money in their reserves, they can loan each other each $1 billion, $100 billion, $100 trillion, and the Fed or the central bank will just say, hey, no problem. We'll go ahead and print those reserves for you and inject them into your accounts. And oh, by the way, we are injecting boatloads of money into the stock market. So you don't have to worry about it ever going down. We've got your back. There is a Fed put. The banks look at each other and say, that is fantastic news. We're going to take this $1 billion and that $1 billion and we're going to inject it into the stock market. That's going to make it grow and grow. In other words, the financial economy just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This becomes a doom vortex in the sense that the fewer restrictions we have on the currency, the more social unrest we have. But the more social unrest we have, those people go to the central banks and the governments for solutions, and the only thing they can do is create more fiat currency. Although I think things will get a lot worse before they get better, I've got some good news. Remember, this is part 1 of a 2-part series. Tomorrow, I discuss how I think a gold standard could help save the world. So for more content that'll help you build wealth and thrive in a world of out-of-control central banks and big governments, check out this playlist right here and check out tomorrow's video when it's up. We'll put that right here, and I will see you on the next video.